There's a person who had an idea once, and he developed his idea. He started small in his garage, building these widgets. I'll call them widgets. He built these widgets, and he knew that people really could use these widgets, and he could really help people with these widgets, so he sold them at a fair price. He was more concerned about helping people than he was about making a huge profit. Although his profit was, he was able to live pretty comfortably, not on the edge, but okay. And as these widgets sold, he found that he needed someone to help him with these widgets. And so he hired some people, and they made more widgets out of his garage, and pretty soon they needed a bigger building, so they moved partly into his house. In his basement, they cleared out his basement and made widgets in his basement and his garage. His garage was more specialized for one part of the widget, and the downstairs under the basement was for another part of the widget. And he produced his widgets to all these people. And his clientele grew, not just to his area, but it started growing around his county and around his state, and then pretty soon the borders increased even more. And so he found himself in a place where he couldn't keep up with demand. And because he couldn't keep up with demand, people were starting to say, well, it's taking too long to get these widgets. Maybe I'll think of something else. So he started to lose some clientele. So he thought, I've got to increase faster than I wanted to increase. I've got to do something more. So he brought some people on board who were investors. And so they invested in his company and gave him capital so he could expand his business, built a new plant that he could, and new people, and produce a lot more widgets so he could supply the demand that was coming in even more and more. But as time went on, the investors had one goal in mind, and he had another goal in mind. Probably can guess what that is. But he started producing, and after a while, he got less and less involved in the decision-making. It was more about the investors saying, we wanted this company to go this direction because we own most of the company now because of our investments. And we want to see this happen, and we want to see that happen, counter to what the owner wanted. So after a while, the owner kind of got pushed off to the side, kind of got edged out. And the company went on, and they hired another CEO, another president, and they continued on their journey, and this original owner was kind of left out in the cold. But he wasn't completely without resources because he had an active, sharp mind, and he was able to once again find out what people really needed and what people really wanted. He was an entrepreneur, and he could make things happen. Does that sound familiar or not at all? I may be way off base, but sometimes it seems like that. Investors may be interested in one thing, maybe a profit, and maybe the owner's interested in maybe producing something that's helpful for people and not so much as profit, but having a purpose and this kind of thing. And so it goes in different directions. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In this text, it started with a landowner buying a piece of land, planting a vineyard, putting a wine press in a fence, a watchtower, and then getting his investors, as so to speak, his tenants, to take care of it because he couldn't do it all. And so he went on to a different country to start probably a new vineyard, a new wine press, a new business of some sort. God created and left us to be the tenants. That's a stewardship message, isn't it? And what do we do as the tenants, the trusted tenants of God in the vineyard? The vineyard being, at that time, Israel. The plantings were the people of Judah. And God is the landowner. We have in our gospel a powerful message. It's something we can relate to today because we know what it's like to lease land, to lease companies, lease buildings, to be renters, to rent buildings, and to take care of things that are not ours. And in this world, everything is God's, so we don't own a lot. We take care. We're the tenants of this world. We're the tenants of our own bodies. We're the tenants of all the resources that we're given. And are we wise tenants or are we not wise tenants? Our house next door, when we first moved in, had renters there. And I didn't talk very much because they had left soon after we moved there, but I would try to strike up a conversation, and it just wasn't happening. And so they left, and the owner came in, and he said, man, I've got to gut the place because they just tore apart everything. So it cost him thousands of dollars to restore the house, to make it marketable again for further renters. And I'm sure in his mind now he's going to be a little bit more careful about who he rents his house to. A nice young couple came in their 20s. Now they've got 2 kids. They've got a nice home. They've done some nice things to this home. They just take care of it so well. They do make nice modifications to it to make it even nicer than it originally was. They're good tenants. They're good renters. Jesus found that these Pharisees, these chief priests, these tenants who he had originally given his vineyard, Israel, over to teach them about the law of God that he gave them throughout the centuries, to teach them the righteousness and what it means to be children of God, they have abused this privilege and considered themselves above everybody else. And so they started working the system to their advantage. So Jesus talks to these chief priests and Pharisees and pointed in more than one occasion, you'll see in Matthew, the parables point directly at these Pharisees, putting them on the spot, putting them on the judgment seat. You are the tenants. You are the ones that killed these slaves, prophets that I sent down to get things redirected again. You're the one that killed my son and threw him out of the vineyard and thought you could handle this all on your own. You are the ones. What should we do with those tenants? And of course, the Pharisees and chief priests, not thinking at the time they were talking about them, said, kill them. Kill those tenants and give the land to somebody else. Whoa, pretty harsh judgment. But you'll notice that Jesus doesn't say, I will kill the tenants and give the vineyard to someone else. He says, I'm taking the vineyard from you and giving it to someone else. Meaning, probably his new people, the new followers, Christians, Jews alike, who know the essence, the kernel of the gospel, who will follow and take care of this vineyard, take care of this land, take care of its plantings, the people that are coming up, the children, the new people who are unchurched, those will be the new tenants for my land, for my created world. In Isaiah, he talks about planting the vineyard, doesn't he? And he describes the vineyard as being Israel, the house of Israel. He also, at the end of Isaiah, talks about he was really bummed out because there was bloodshed, and he'd rather have justice. God saw that this meaning for people who thought justice meant taking up the sword and destroying. It's not what he's talking about at all. The chief priests, the first thing they said was kill the tenants, and God doesn't say that. Replace the tenants. Take something away from them. I want justice, not bloodshed. Think of new creative ways to solve your issues, to help people, rather than by the sword or by the gun or the bomb or whatever. Jesus created this parable to put a main focus, to look at our lives as Christians who maybe feel like we're the new Pharisees, that we have the truth, that everybody else is wrong, and then we have the truth, and let's just destroy everybody else, and we're not held accountable because we had this special status, just like the Pharisees thought they did. Our job is to love Jesus and to produce fruits of the Spirit, the righteousness, and not be so concerned about who's in and who's out, but it's to love people as Jesus loved us, as Jesus continues to love us. The main point I see in this story, for those confirmation kids who are taking notes right now, nice, all right, I see some blue sheets of paper, good, is that God keeps the vineyard. God doesn't destroy the vineyard, He keeps the vineyard. It's worth saving. He simply switches management. No one gets killed in the process. Nothing gets destroyed. There's simply a changing of the guard. The vineyard is important. The plantings are important. And God saves that and keeps nurturing it for all of us. Amen.